Hello there, beautiful people. My name is Tim Lee, and welcome to Draw Too Much here in Legacy Studio. You're going to have to sit back and relax with me for a little bit, or do some fast forwarding, or, well, trust me, I'm already fast forwarding this for you 2,500%, and this is still a rather long video. I mean, this is days of work here, and you know what? If you begin to question in yourself when you're drawing or you're painting, you're going, this just doesn't feel right, just watch the progress work. I did not feel good about the blocking in that I did on this rose. Just watch it over time here. You're seeing it from start to finish, to the very finish of the painting. You're going to see every detail that I did here. Let's go ahead and start talking about one of the first things I did notice, though. I've really enjoyed using white charcoal on a black surface. The only difference from this in comparison to the rose that I showed you in my previous video is that this was actually being drawn not on black gesso, but was being drawn on top of a black liquid mix of oil paint that I had dried. And unfortunately, that was actually not erasing as easily. It wasn't giving me the depth and breadth that I was getting out of the previous drawing that you saw in my previous episode. So the way I fixed it is I used a kneaded eraser, and literally touching the kneaded eraser to the areas that I wanted to erase actually did better than going at it with a electric eraser, which rather surprised me. But you'll see here that I was still at least able to get the blocking in. When it comes to roses, they are such a challenge. So many different areas to consider and think about, and the one thing I realized for myself is furthering the point that everyone tells you, and that knowing how to draw when it comes to painting is actually more important than the painting itself. I hate to say it because I hate to waste time on things, but when it comes to drawing, that much is absolutely true. If I did not block in this rose and draw it in properly from the start, it would not have turned out the way it turned out in the end. So really focusing in on those details, one thing that really helped me out was really sharpening up my charcoal pencil to the sharpest that I possibly could. I suggest go get yourself a cardboard box cutter or a X-Acto knife and sharpen that lead or that charcoal as sharp as you can. It really does make a difference. And then having those blenders from Soft are really good. And once again, those are palette knives that are covered with a foam of some sort. It's a very thick foam. It's kind of like you'd get for, well, maybe your mom or your grandmother or your wife would get if they're doing their makeup. It's that kind of foam. And it's made usually for what they call pan pastels, where you can get different colors, and it works really well with charcoal. And so you'll see me use it a lot. You'll see me use my finger here and there, and you'll see me also use the palette knives to also erase. So if your palette knife is clean, then you can go in and you can erase away some of that charcoal with that while it is still clean. And I think there might actually be ways to clean up the foam to make it last a little longer. You'll see later on here when we get into the paint a little ways in that we take this a bit further, and one thing I really wanted to make sure to do was build up the roundness of each one of those petals. I didn't get that at first. We'll get to a point where you see that everything's vibrant, a little too vibrant, and then you'll see me knock it down a little later. But right now is just refining the form, just trying to figure out where each one of these petals is going, really focusing in. I liked having my image that I took of the rose petal, the rose. I bought my wife a bunch of roses, and then I stole one from her, and I took a bunch of pictures of it, and that's what this rose is. And what I did was I put it on my computer screen so that I could zoom in to key parts of it and really focus in on those key areas. But I started first by blocking out overall shapes and looking for lines. It also kind of really locked into my brain why a lot of people don't work in curves. A lot of people work in straight lines and edges, thinking about those 45-degree angles, 90-degree angles, things of that nature. Really locking those in is really important. And then just taking that and moving it from those sharp 45, 90, 20, 27 degree, whatever angle you're drawing on, and then begin to make them more round. That's the key part. So as we go in with the paint here, I really wanted to make sure, honestly, that I started with vibrant, bright levels. I really wanted to do something that I used to do in drawing digitally, and that was I wanted to get the really low dark areas and the really high bright areas, and then I wanted to tune in everything around them to create my forms. I do that a lot in digital art, and I found it really helped because if I think about the brightest point of my drawing or painting, even if it's digital, and then I think about the darkest point, I have to make my way through the colors to get from that dark side to that light side, and it gives you a goal to set for. Now you'll see that worked at least to build up the shape and tone of this flower, but then I needed to do some things in addition, and that's why glazing is so important later. And one of my first experiences with glazing just recently really excited me on what you can actually do with glazing, and I'll show you that a little later. I wanted to use a lot of tones to bring out the velvetiness of this rose, and I was seeing a lot of purples and blues in the shadows, so I really wanted to make sure, while also getting those pitch black shadows in there, those really crushed blacks, I wanted to also get those velvets and those blue tones in there. So you'll see me reaching into that palette quite often as I keep going into the color here, really, even pushing it a little bit above and keeping it more vibrant than it should be. That leaf that petal that I'm working on right now should be far more red, far more vivid than it is right now, but I'm keeping it sitting in that purple and blue hue and only touching in with certain bits of red. You'll see me intensify that later. I just wanted to block in the basics right now. This is the blocking in stage. You really don't want to kid yourself. You're going to be working on this for a very, very long time, so don't try to take everything to the finish right at the start. Block in with just the close colors. Don't overthink it. That's the thing I always do. I overthink it. This color isn't perfectly matching. What do I do? Is this going to work? I really don't know. Trust your own system. Trust the plan. Plans get things as close as possible, work on them a little bit over time, and just allow that flower to take its form and shape. And you can see I'm going down to like 00 size brushes. I'm going in super small for certain areas, and then I'll get out a big brush and I'll block in some more larger areas. You know what? Don't be afraid to switch brushes. A lot of people are like, only use the big brushes, only block things in, lots of big blurbs. No, there's going to be a point in time where the only option that you have is to go in with a smaller brush. Don't follow everyone else's system. It doesn't need to be your system. In the end, this whole thing actually turned out pretty well, in my opinion. And you'll see here as we get in nice and close that the little details that I'm putting in with these tiny, tiny little brushes. By the way, if you're curious what brushes I use quite a large variety, and of course I thought, I need the big expensive brushes, I need the nice brushes. So I tried getting some from, what is the name of that one brand? Rose? Oh, I should know this off the top of my head. I have a brush right over here. I'll be able to tell you here as soon as I look at it. Rosemary & Co. I got the Tish series, if you know Andrew Tischler, an incredible, incredible artist. But then I found, you know what, maybe it would just be nice to get something, still expensive, but a little cheaper. So I went over to Hobby Lobby, and one of the brushes I absolutely love buying over there, and you can actually get pretty cheap on Amazon, is a bunch of brushes called Moderna brushes. Now Moderna, you might be thinking, COVID test, or COVID vaccine. Well, these brushes were before COVID, but yes, Moderna is the name, and I believe it's even spelled the same way. They're really, really nice brushes. I really like them. I kind of baby them a little bit. And then I'm also using a lot of Master's Touch brushes. And you know what I've learned? As I've been walking around watching other artists at art shows, a lot of artists very happily use Master Touch brushes because you can get them on sale, sometimes 50% off if you go during their sales, and they have them often. In the same thing, the quality of the brushes is very reasonable. There's no reason to be afraid of them, so just grab your brushes and go, and you'll learn what you like about brushes more. If you consider that I came from watercolor, very soft bristles is something that I'm very, very used to, and Moderna kind of leans on that soft bristle side. And then I also have the Tish brushes, and I also have some I think it's evergreen brushes, all made from Rosemary & Co., which a lot of artists absolutely love. and personally I don't use them very much because they're hog bristle and they give a different texture than I'm used to doing. But you might find that you absolutely love those hog bristle brushes. Don't be afraid of trying it for yourself, and put some money aside for experiments, and then take the rest of that and put it towards stuff that you know you're going to work with and be okay with. I really like my Moderna brushes. I really like small bristle brushes that don't have long bristles, and you're more scraping the paint in than you are dabbing it in. I do like that more myself personally, and I think that those are actually called more of a blender brush style, and I probably don't even use those brushes correctly, but they work really well for how I like to paint, at least. So you can see, if you look at the brushes I'm using right now, they don't have very long bristles. They're all pretty small, and that just works for my personal touches. So I really tried my best to get in the shadows pretty early, really get them dark, and even down to those pitch blacks. If it was pitch black or close to it, I went in with a black line. A lot of people will tell you that it's easier to pull lights out of blacks when you're doing oils, and that is certainly not the case for many other art forms, but in this case, yes. If you want to start off dark, you'll have plenty of room to build. And I think that's kind of my problem right now. I'm so used to doing things in a watercolor sense, where you make everything bright and then you darken it as you go along, and it's actually harder to do that according to many artists in oil color. So what I ended up doing, and you'll see that in a while, is I'll go in after the paint had dried overnight and become completely solid, because I use liquid quite heavily, so it dries literally overnight for me. And I went in and I put in a complete what I call two steps. If you know anything about cameras and taking photos, we work in stops. How many stops of light are you letting in? So what I tell people is I've dropped this down by 2 stops, so you'll see the rose get quite a bit darker, and then I come back over top with the same colors that I'm using here, those vibrant bright tones, and I pop it back out again. But because I've dropped it by 2 stops, everything goes into the shadow, and then I pull it back out, and it looks really, really good. And the way that I also did that was by using more purples in the blacks and even some blues in the blacks, so I wasn't just darkening it overall. I was actually giving it that build up the way it needed to be. It worked really, really well, and you'll see that a little later on here as we continue in our video here. If you have any questions, ask them down below. I'm a new oil painter myself. I've probably only been, I look through all my photos on my phone and I don't realize that I've probably been painting for maybe about 2 years now, and only just beginning to connect and really touch with my and get in touch with my brushes and begin to understand and feel them. So I can give you advice from a beginner standpoint and give you an advice from that aha moment that you're looking for. That's the only thing that we can do. That's the only thing I can offer. And as I get better at this, I'll be happy to share more with you, because I'm planning on sticking around in this world of art for a while. Because I gotta tell you, it's a beautiful thing when you can just consider where we've come from. Look at the videos I've made previously. I am a vector style cartoonist. Imagine a vector style cartoonist making I'm not going to say a realistic, but a fairly realistic ram's skull, which is no easy task, and a fairly realistic, somewhat to an extent, very 3D, we will say that, rose and skull. Okay, that is a humongous leap from the original art form that I've taught you guys for so long. We're getting to that point where we're going to put down that stop soon and darken things up here in just a few minutes. So keep a close eye out, because you're going to see a pretty quick wash happen that's probably going to go by pretty quickly at 2,500% sped up. And this was done, I want to say, over 4 or 5 days, maybe sitting down maybe about 3 hours, 4 hours every day of painting. Believe it or not, it does go by faster than you may think. Alright, here comes in the stop. So you can see everything's getting a little bit darker here, and all I did was a lot of liquid and a little bit of paint. And it's just almost working like a watercolor, not exactly. It's actually kind of blobbing in a little bit more challengingly than I wanted, but as you can see, look at how rich those darker tones have become. When I was standing there looking at it, it didn't look quite right, and I was really, really hoping I was going the right direction. you'll see as I go back in here with the same colors I used before and start dabbing things in a little bit more intensively in key areas, including adding highlight, it will make a humongous difference. Here goes that second stop. Look at how dark this flower is getting. My goal was to honestly change the light because the way I painted the skull had the light coming from the top left down. The way I painted the rose, well, honestly, I went with whatever my picture had, and it wasn't quite matching. So I tried to match the lighting. I can't say I did it successfully, but I will tell you this. What you're watching right now, I do have my reference photo up, but I'm using it very, very little. Most of what I'm doing right here is gut instinct. Now, considering that I don't have any previous experience in doing this, gut instinct, I wasn't sure if it was going to work. So what I did was the same idea. I went to my highlights and I put them in where I wanted the sun to point to, or the light source to point to. So directing that light on the left side of the flower and really popping up those bright areas, that told me where I needed to put more of those brighter tones and colors to look like they're being touched by the sun. So you'll see that happen more as I begin to increase this flower. Now we're actually getting close to wrapping up our video here. If you did enjoy it, it'd do me a great honor if you follow me on Instagram, where I am posting most of the paintings that I'm working on. You can see them in progress every day that I'm working on them. I take pictures of them, get them up on Instagram. It's official_legacy studio. That's what you look up on Instagram, official_legacy studio. And it would be an honor to have you there, and follow my page, leave your comments, hit that little heart button if you enjoy some of the work I'm doing. I'm still trying to figure out what kind of content I like to paint. I've done everything from landscapes down to these skulls, and honestly the skulls are fun, but I'm not sure how far I can take them. And there's also a certain art form that I need to do for the art show that I am specifically going to, which is a Western themed art show. So landscapes, animal skulls, things like that do fit, but I haven't really decided if that's the direction I want to take it, because I'm not exactly known for my dark death skull kind of artwork, to say the least. I'm known for bright, cheerful, and cheery. This has been really fun to paint this, though. And in the end, you don't see the death nearly as much as you see the beauty and the color and everything popping, and that makes me feel good. You know, I really want to be known for that. Alright, well that's going to do it for this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and believe it or not, as I'm talking to you calmly and collectively, my computer just went into the blue screen of death. So, I don't think I saved that, so I'll be starting from scratch. So in saying that, when you watch this video, I'd greatly appreciate it if you hit that like button, because my computer just completely died. Good thing I'm recording on a separate audio source. And my phone just laughed at me. That's wonderful. Alright. I'll see you next time right here on Legacy Studio and Draw Too Much. Thank you so much for watching, folks. And thank you so much for sticking around on this channel and for subscribing. Maybe you came for the caricatures and here I am doing classical paintings? What happened? I don't know either. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.